of other people's negligence for over 50 years here in South Florida. If you get injured as a result of somebody else's negligence, it can be a car accident, it can be a slip and fall, medical malpractice, negligent security. If somebody else's negligence caused an injury to either you or one of your loved ones, give us a call. Our phone number is on our page, our website is on our page, and our email addresses are on our page. Please give us a call for a free consultation. We'd love to help you. Let Zach and I protect your rights.
Can I break the news? I can, but I won't, you know?
And welcome to the edition of FOF Live, presented by Burger and Hicks. As always, you can check out Burger and Hicks on their Instagram, their TikTok page, and you can check them out down below. We'll have their phone number and their website. And what a last 24, 48 hours it has been for the Fish. A win, a series win against arguably the best team in baseball. And the Marlins dominating the trade news, having the biggest trade news for at least 2 hours, you could say, a solid 2 hours, taking over the trade news with a puck going to Arizona. As you can see here, all the deadline trades, including today with Zach Eflin going from the Rays to the Orioles. Orioles doing another trade, swapping Austin Hayes for Anthony Dominguez. Randy Arozarena going from the Rays to the Mariners. We'll touch on all that, what it means for the Marlins. But I mentioned in the beginning, we'll briefly cover. Let's talk about this Marlins series win against the Orioles. Orioles have been in a big talking point for Major League Baseball the last couple of days, especially with these trades and losing 2-1 against the Marlins. Kevin, I want to go to you first. I'm guessing no one had this coming in. Are you going to prediction time? You could talk to maybe people on Twitter. It seemed like it was for sure the Orioles were going to win the series, most likely sweep it, but it turns out Marlins beat them 2-1. What is your big takeaway from this series win?
Josh Bell looked really, really good in all three games, but the pitching was all right. I mean, I really am surprised. Jazz looked really good in that first game. Really showing why the value is there for his trade, why teams should be trading for Jazz. It kind of felt like, all the guys that were possibly going to get traded really performed in that first game. Puck with the win, another scoreless outing for him. Tanner Scott with the save. Josh Bell, I believe, hit a home run in this one too. And Jazz, I believe, drove in those runs to take the lead. So really good series for the most part. They got to the young rookie who was making his debut. I believe, what's his name? Now I complete McKenna. Ryan McKenna, I think is his name. I think.
No. You're mixing.
McDermott.
Yeah, there you go. McDermott.
There we go. Yeah. Right. But yeah, I mean, they got to him. Bell, I think, hit a homer as well off of him. That was the first guy to hit a homer off of him. But yeah, I mean, couldn't have asked for more. And then that last game, they made it pretty interesting and kind of fell there.
Yeah, made it really interesting in that last one. 6 unanswered runs. They're down 6-0 against Corbin Burns in that final series. And he just wrote them off. And they tacked on a couple runs late against Burns. And then Kimbrel imploded in the 9th inning. Maybe not surprised that the Phillies and the Orioles hook up on a trade the very next day to get the Orioles another reliever in their mix and Sir Anthony Dominguez. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Orioles are still shopping for yet another impact reliever that could come from the Marlins in order to shore up that situation right now. Yeah, pretty surprising, although maybe not, because just recently the Orioles hadn't been playing their best ball even coming into this series. So to some extent, this is a continuation of a trend for the Orioles where they just hadn't been playing super well right before the break or even coming out of the break, playing up to their potential. Prior to that, they had been arguably the best team in baseball. I think right now there's still some questions about it. It's a really deep lineup, but when Gunnar Henderson isn't really setting the tone, and he was super quiet in this series, I think that was the biggest standout, is that the Marlins really shut down Gunnar Henderson both offensively. And then in that last game, the only reason why it went into extras is because Gunnar booted a really routine ball at shortstop. That the ball that Jazz hit, they were still down 6-3. It was like at least one, it should have been one automatic out, maybe a double play, and he totally screws it up. And that ended up allowing 2 unearned runs to score and force things to move on. So you can look at it both ways, where the Marlins guys were impressive. The last game, Jazz had never had 2 plays like that in center field in the same game. So the kind of impact that he made defensively really stood out. And I agree with what Kevin said with Josh Bell as well. I think I'm the only one that's delusional to think that Josh Bell may have a trade market over these next few days.
That makes 2 of us.
Well, I guess I converted you a little bit. So even though his overall season numbers are not going to recover to what they had been in the past, he's somebody that has such a long track record. And now that he is performing well at the right time, maybe that does convince a team to take a flyer on him, at least as a part-time guy, to beef up their lineup.
And I mean, the bullpen as well in that first game. And I know Punk was at the forefront of it with as he got the win, but they didn't allow a single hit. They struck out 1, 2, 7 in total between Hoeing, Nardi, Puck, and Tanner Scott at the end. So really just, I mean, you couldn't have asked for a better first game. And that's probably the best the offense has looked in the 3-game stretch. I mean, scoring 6 in each run, I don't think they've done that all season long. So you couldn't have asked for more. And, the Marlins were able to make a move right after that 3rd game, which comes through their bullpen.
Yeah, just mentioning everything from that side. What did you see maybe from the pitching side for the Marlins? I don't know if you touched on this while I was away, but what did you see on the pitching side maybe for the Marlins? Did it impress you at all? Again, Eli mentioning how deep this Baltimore Orioles lineup is and maybe not really getting anything going as much as maybe most people would have thought. But how did you see this pitching staff going through this entire series?
Well, I mean, I kind of just touched on it right away. The bullpen looked phenomenal in that first game. They didn't allow a hit. Kyle Tyler kind of limited the damage. In that middle game, Edward held them scoreless. I believe it was Brazoban right after who inherited the bases loaded, and that really made Edward's final line look pretty bad, although he wasn't great. But still, I mean, when you limit the Orioles to no runs throughout most of your start, that's pretty good. And that final game, I believe it was – who even was it? Who was the starter?
That was Munoz.
It was Munoz, who got optioned today. So, I mean, he was all right. He gave up. I believe he was the one who gave up all the runs in that game. So, not the greatest start for him. But at this point, he's just giving you some innings. Yeah, gave up all 6 runs. Bullpen didn't look that too sharp. Although Cronin looked good, Fauché took the loss, and then Shagwal looked all right. So, I mean, it was all right from the pitching side. I think that first game is really where the highlight comes, where the bullpen once again puts another all zeros for the Marlins. So
yeah. Are you guys big on terms of Edward on the notion that maybe he needs to move to the bullpen sooner rather than later? Or do you guys subscribe to that, or maybe if it's still see what he has left?
Edward?
Yeah, Cabrera.
Yeah, you could go to the bullpen. I'm kind of out on him as a starter. I think, especially after this last one, I think we all kind of simultaneously agree to where it's just, the stuff is there. He has really good stuff, but when you can't control it or command it, it's just, why? One of these spurts may be able to help you. Right now, they need him as a starter. He's probably going to stick as a starter.
Right.
I like that Eli right now is showing the roster thing. They're going with a 10 players and 10 pitchers in that bullpen, which is definitely interesting. I think now they have 3 starting pitchers on the 26-man roster with Edward, Kyle Tyler, and Trevor. So obviously Max Meyer got called up, or is going to get called up. So they'll make some sort of move there. I'm assuming Austin. No offense to Austin Kitchen, but I'm assuming he's getting the boot tomorrow, and they'll go with Max Meyer to make that start tomorrow.
Yeah. So, I mean, you just touched on it with Eddie. I've been out on him as a starter since before the season. And when he was in trade rumors, I'm like, you're not going to get a lot in return, but realistically, this just isn't going to work. And the combination of the missed time, and then even when he has a good start, like he did this past one, he just can't finish it in a way that's really satisfying. There's always some combination of the control issues. And sometimes when he tries too hard to throw strikes, he becomes surprisingly hittable. It's been a really bad season for Eddie, but just out of the circumstances, out of necessity, he's going to have a handful of more starts to come, really throughout the entire month of August. And they can reevaluate as guys come back from the injured list. So this is really, at this point, it's a desperation time for Eddie if he wants to potentially be a notable guy on this team moving forward. Otherwise, I think unless things really dramatically change, he'll probably enter next spring as a bullpen candidate. He has legitimate intrigue in that role because of the quality of his stuff and how he looks in certain innings one at a time. So that's why it makes you a little bit more comfortable trading relievers at this deadline when you have somebody like him who, even though he hasn't been a reliever before, it really doesn't take a whole lot of imagination to see something clicking if he does have a smaller role than he has right now.
Yeah, and you just you say right in the head, Eli. You mentioned relievers, and looking at this, people might be saying, hey, there's one reliever missing, and it is AJ Puck. I heard news yesterday, AJ Puck getting traded to the Arizona Diamondbacks for Davison De Los Santos and Andrew Pintar, both outfielders. I believe both top 15, top 20 prospects for at least Arizona, top 25, I believe, but for sure top 30. But talk to me, Kevin. I want to hear more on the prospect side of this. What are the Marlins getting in Santos and for Pintar as well? And maybe how do they stack up against the rest of this Marlins prospect list?
Yeah, with De Los Santos, just really quick to correct you, he's first baseman, third baseman, not an outfielder. Pintar is outfielder, plays a little bit of second, but he hasn't played second in a bit. So right now I think it's just fair to say he's a center fielder. De Los Santos immediately becomes the best position player prospect. Now it's just a matter of how much higher can we put him on the top 30 list. Pintar probably towards the lower portion of this top 30. He hasn't played a lot of pro baseball, but enough to where he's definitely a top 30 guy, and he's shown it. I like De Los Santos a lot. Eli was kind of putting up the highlights today at the first base. Looks pretty good there. It's all right. I mean, it kind of lowers the value a little bit, but I mean, this guy has 28 home runs this season. I believe leads all minor league baseball in home runs. Obviously, now leads the organization in home runs total. That includes the major league side of things. Probably doesn't get called up this season, but I mean, never say never with this organization. If they want to give him a shot, they would probably late September. I like the hit tool. He's a pretty quick guy for the most part. Honestly, just with his size, he has he has a good amount of stolen bases this season. I like the profile. Maybe a little bit too much strikeout percentage, but still, he's been able to manage it at each stop this season, at least in Double-A and in Triple-A. I believe it's at 22% at each stop, so not too shabby. Yeah, I like what the Marlins are getting. This is by far the best position player prospect. Victor Mesa Jr. maybe not too far behind, just overall better defense, but I like it. And then Pintar's a center fielder, obviously not the same profile as someone like a Pintar, but someone from the Diamondback side of things is very high on Pintar. Told me that Marlins are getting a really good prospect. He ranks towards the top for most stats in high A, just got called up to Double-A. Only played 10 games, struggled a little bit there, but he's going to Pensacola. De Los Santos is going to Triple-A Jacksonville. So should be interesting to see these guys. I believe probably in the lineup come Monday or even tomorrow. We'll see when Pintar gets there. But yeah, I mean, very, very, very good trade for the Marlins, honestly. Peter Bennick's starting it off pretty well. I was honestly a little surprised that they dealt Puck earlier than I thought. I thought this may have been a thing where you see it the day before or the day of, just because Puck was the most valuable piece in that bullpen, just given the amount of control he has and how good he's been, So definitely interested. It was a little shocking to see that trade go through, but funny enough, we were all on a call at that same exact time, so we got a pretty fun reaction out of it. And then the spaces, Puck had been dominant. There's no other way to say it. Failed as a starter, unfortunately, after what looked like was going to be an amazing season for him after spring training. Multiple of our own staffers chose him as to be the MVP of the season. And yeah, there you go. Daniel chose him. Isaac did as well. And since going back to the bullpen, he's been really, really good. And I believe he's on a scoreless streak of like 14 games, 16 and at 2/3 innings without allowing an earned run. So he takes that over to Arizona, which looks to go back to the World Series. They have Sewald, Kevin Ginkel. Now you had Puck. Puck could go multiple innings. I mean, it's a really good piece that the Diamondbacks are getting. He should be there with the Diamondbacks tomorrow. I believe he's in Arizona. So, yeah, really good trade for the Marlins. And, that kind of just goes to kind of get you a little bit more excited to see what else they could trade. You know, I look like at a Cronin and a Fauché who have been really good, can be a little bit more volatile than a Puck, but they have a lot more control. I mean, those guys aren't free agents until 2030. So I'm pretty excited to see what type of prospects they could get, and especially Tanner Scott, who I wouldn't be shocked if they pair him up with Jazz in a trade.
Yeah, so to answer this question, I think it's Alex Carver that has heard that De Los Santos is already with AAA Jacksonville, so he's joined the team, but he's not playing today. They're playing a doubleheader tonight, so I don't know. Maybe he shocks everybody and plays tonight in their second game of the doubleheader. He's not playing in the first game. Most likely, he makes his debut with the Jumbo Shrimp tomorrow, so that will be exciting to see. And the longer that I dwell on this, I have more concerns about him. I think it's a little bit premature to say he's the top hitter in the hitting prospect in the organization. We'll talk about that as a group after the deadline. Maybe they make it easy for us and they acquire somebody that's even a more complete and well-rounded player. There's a lot to be excited about. And I can tell that people in our community are very excited about it just because he rakes across AA and AAA, a 155 WRC plus, 55% better than a league average hitter as a 21-year-old. It's awesome. It doesn't mean that that's going to translate one-to-one in the big leagues. And to me, in particular, just watching him more closely, there's just going to have to be adjustments. He's going to have to be more selective as a hitter. Otherwise, when he reaches the big leagues, pitchers are going to have a book out on the fact that he's really aggressive, and they're not going to throw him strikes, and he's going to chase those pitches, and he's going to strike out a lot more than he currently is, and the batting average is going to go down, and there's a risk that he's just not effective. Like, there's still bust potential unless he continues to develop. So there still is some development here, as crazy as that sounds for somebody that's been one of the best hitters in minor league baseball this year at upper levels. I think there is still some development that needs to happen here before the Marlins can feel that he's a building block of their future. And Kevin noted on his defense, I watched his defense. He looks fine at first base. He's short. He is 5'11". There's not a whole lot of first basemen that are 5'11", because that just limits the reach that you can get, but he is relatively flexible. There's a little bit more athleticism than you might think in his frame. He has a good glove. He can't throw. He really just cannot. Like, I saw him at third base. He has issues. The transfer time that takes for him to go to his glove to the hands is not good enough. He drops down his arm almost every single time. It looks really awkward when he has to make any sort of throw. So I think that applies when he's playing first base as well. It's just really limited defense and base running value from him. So it's a lot of pressure on the bat, and that's the bat that needs to make some improvements. Gerard, well, the comp that I put on to take it away from the Marlins, the guy that I thought was somewhat of a close comp in my baseball watching experience, I went all the way back to Diane Viciedo, who was an outfielder with the White Sox in the early 2010s and didn't really have a successful major league career. Like, he hit 70 home runs or so, but he's a really bad defender and like a league average hitter overall because he didn't walk. I don't think, maybe there's some similarities to Gerard as well, but it's a totally different body type than Gerard, so I didn't really think of that as a notable comp. Like, there's still some work to be done here with him. This is a good pickup, especially because you also get a second prospect who I think is mildly interesting in Pintar. But there's still some work here. I think it's just a really fair trade all around that makes a lot of sense for both teams involved. That's my boring answer, but I think it's a very fascinating player. I just might be a little bit more nervous about him than the general public seems to be.
Yeah, and then the Gerard comp is a little interesting because he doesn't strike out over 40% of the time. You know, it's in the mid to low 20s. That's not that bad, and it's not just the power profile. I mean, he has a really good hit tool. He's hit over 300 in his last two stops. It's not, if whoever thinks Gerard Encarnacion is a comp, I would eliminate that if I were you very, very quickly, because that's not at all what could it be? Maybe if he begins to get a lot more aggressive, and he swings a lot apparently, which I guess is true, but it's not Gerard Encarnacion who's striking out 40% of the time.
I think a very, very polished, coming to fruition Gerard Encarnacion might be this type of prospect if he ever got it together offensively in the higher levels of the minors. The power was always there for Gerard, but unfortunately, obviously, the bat never caught up to the raw power. I did find it interesting. I agree with you, Kevin. I don't think it's fair to De Los Santos because Gerard is more playing in Mexico right now, and I think that De Los Santos is a 21-year-old.
He's raking. Yeah.
I think De Los Santos is a 21-year-old that's absolutely crushing every stop he's been in. But we'll have to see. I think Eli's also very fair that there is substantial risk as well. But that being said, for 2.5 years of AJ Puck, I think you take that gamble, especially with the second prospect that you get, who's probably going to slide in the 17 to 22 range in our top 30 list coming up.
Do you think this was the best possible offer on the table for AJ Puck, or do you think maybe they should have waited for something else? You think this is the best they could have done?
I would assume so. I mean, I'm a little intrigued that they did this yesterday. Honestly, they probably could have waited a little longer. Maybe this offer wasn't going to be on the board at that time, but I mean, this is something it needs to be made clear. This guy's by far the most valuable player they had on the table in the bullpen. So maybe they could have gone something better, maybe higher level, a better prospect than De Los Santos, and just done some sort of 1-for-1. Who knows? Or even added Puck with Jazz in a trade. So yeah, and no, he did not make his major league debut. He was selected in the Rule 5 draft. He went through most of camp with Cleveland, and then he was sent right back to Arizona. Just 20 years old, just a lot of still really raw at the time. Now, obviously, it's a little bit different, but yeah.
I mean, we'll never know, Daniel. I think
So.
I think if they waited until Tuesday, maybe someone else gets really desperate and offers you something that you can't pass up. We'll never know the answer to that. I think maybe in the next coming months, we do plan on having some fun guests coming up on Unfiltered. I think we will know what else was on the table. We'll know all the what ifs of this fun time of year. So make sure to stay tuned with all our podcasts coming up in the next 7 to 10 business days.
And let's go a little bit to talk about the news coming. Well, it was also match day with Max Meyer coming back up to the Marlins to make his start tomorrow. Kevin, I'll let you have the floor. Max Meyer coming back, surprisingly, after he gets another extra year under team control. Talk to us about Max Meyer and his coincidentally him getting some playing time after now being in the organization till I believe 29, is it now?
Yeah, till 2029. Good for the Marlins. Congrats. They get another year of Max Meyer. We'll see if he stays with the organization until 2029. But yeah, he should have been up a while ago. They really need the rotation help. Again, only 3 starters right now on the start in that 26-man roster. It's going to be 4 tomorrow when they activate Max Meyer. He's been all right in AAA. It's really just been more of let's get him going a little bit more, kind of putting workload going up little by little. And I believe he went 6 innings one day or 5. But they need a starter badly, and Max Meyer's going to be that guy. Right now, it doesn't look like any of the other guys on the IL are close to coming back. We'll see what happens. Definitely has been working on some stuff in AAA. That's maybe why the numbers don't look great, but he was by far the best starter before going down. So maybe he very likely will take that the best starter spot again with not much competition up there with aside from Trevor Rogers, maybe.
I must have missed this. Did he grow out the handlebar mustache?
Yeah, not immediately. I'll try to pin down the date. Felt like maybe in June at some point he started using it. So that picture, it's not his most recent start, but I think this was like within the last few weeks. So I guess tomorrow will be a really fascinating reveal to find out exactly what he's sporting facial hair wise. But
we'll find out today. I'm sure they're going to zoom in on him 15 times during the broadcast. So
yeah,
we should know.
Okay. Yeah. So I did want to show those game logs right there just to get people up to speed that he was pitching really well recently. Last 4 starts, 2 earned runs allowed in 19 innings. Before that, he was really mediocre anyway you slice it, but he did come on lately. And he's been building up to this for a while, for about a month. I don't know if this was communicated directly to him, but about a month ago was when he started pitching more frequently. It was a full week in between starts initially, and now it was 6 days, and then even on one occasion, 5 days in between, which was normal major league rest. And they gradually loosened the reins, where it was strictly 4 innings or less every single start for the first like 10, 11 starts, and then they let him go past 4 and then past 5, and he had that one outing where he completed 6. Yeah, overall, he looks like the same guy that he did before. The velocity is the same. The slider is still awesome. Changeup is still inconsistent. Like I think that second to last appearance on the 14th is when he picked up a couple of strikeouts with his changeup. 15 starts in AAA. He had 5 total strikeouts with his changeup. Only 5. Like, it's still not a put away pitch at all. It's one that occasionally he locates for strikes, but he's still really relying on his slider to put guys away. So that question is still there, developmental wise. But one of the big motivations here was just to keep him pitching consistently the entire season while also maintaining a reasonable workload. And I think they succeeded in that. If you do the math at this point, it's 75 total innings that he's pitched this year. He could probably stay in the rotation the rest of the year, and he'll set a new career high in innings, but he's not going to blow past it. It could be, fingers crossed, a really nice stepping stone to him being a regular starter with no restrictions next year. But he still needs to prove himself. There's still some questions about whether he'll be a starter. And just to clarify exactly what was going on with the service time thing, I did lay this out in an article on our site earlier today, just to put the numbers behind it. Entered the year 1 year and 82 days of MLB service time. By the time he sent them down, he was still 62 days short of getting a second year of service time. Or I should say 72 days short of getting that second year of service time. They've held him down so that there's less than 72 days remaining in the season, which means that it created this entire extra year of team control. Entering this year, he was due to reach free agency after the 2028 season, and now he is due to reach free agency after the 2029 season. He cannot get there any sooner because of limit on his service time by spending most of the year down in AAA. So there's a little bit more in the article if you guys want to check it out on the site, but there's no doubt that this was a motivation. This is the reason why he was called up today instead of right after the All-Star break, why the Marlins have been using basically 4 starters for almost a month now. I mean, it's been a total mess ever since both Luzardo and Braxton got injured. That was more than a month ago. Ever since then, it's been this carousel in the back end of the rotation. It didn't have to be that way, but was that way because the Marlins apparently still value his future highly enough that they think he can be a major leaguer for a long time in some role, and they want an extra year of control, whether that is for their own team building purposes or whether to increase his trade value. So it's really unfortunate. It's the byproduct of being in a year where you're just not competing whatsoever, where this front office is competing for the future, and they exploited him. There's really no doubt about it. That at that point, once he was down there, they said, well, might as well keep him down because we'd rather have him in 2029 than the rest of 2024. That's where their priorities are.
One eye on the present, one eye on the future.
Can't a player file grievance in a situation like this if he knows that this is the case? Everyone and the grandmothers know this is the case. He knows it's the case. His agent knows this is the case. Why didn't no one say anything?
Yeah, but then they could just say, it's interesting because there's the Chris Bryant one too. I don't know if did he end up filing? I think he did, and he just didn't win.
My point on this, we discussed this off show before, is you just can't really prove this thing to an independent third party that doesn't really know ball, because those are the people that need a rule and you really grievance on this stuff. It's so hard to prove this stuff because of all the different ways you can evaluate players. Like, there are a lot of ways to spin Max's AAA time to say that he wasn't, they sent him down and he would have come back earlier if he performed a certain way and whatever. It's all subjective. That's the thing.
Yeah, but it doesn't take a forensics team to see that he was one of the team's best 5 starting pitching options at the time of his demotion.
He was the best.
Right. So any idiot who doesn't know ball should be able to argue that. But I understand. Obviously, it's very difficult.
The point that Devin makes also is true. I mean, it's hard to win those.
I know, but if there was ever a chance, I don't think this is like the best case for one of these situations, but it's just so interesting to me that it was so obvious what was being done here. You'd think it'd be easy to prove. He was easily one of the best starters they had available, and they didn't. Just like Chris Bryant, he was one of the better 25 men available, and they kept it down for a specific reason. Interesting.
Wasn't it to work on his defense, they said?
They say a whole bunch of horse hockey. It's all hogwash.
All right, I think it's a good time to go to the break, Eli. So let's get that flip fish, and then we'll go ahead and talk about this preview against the Brewers and some more trade talks, including Seattle and what they did yesterday with Randy.
You're muted, Eli.
I give it a 7 out of 10 difficulty, but I think some people would disagree. The only tricky part is remembering that this guy played for both of these teams because he had a very long career, 1998 to 2014, Venezuelan shortstop. Those are his overall numbers. So yeah, just take the break, think about it for a few seconds. A whole lot more on the other side here on FOF Live. Stick with us.
We have been representing people injured as a result of other people's negligence for over 50 years here in South Florida. If you get injured as a result of somebody else's negligence, it can be a car accident, it can be a slip and fall, medical malpractice, negligent security. If somebody else's negligence caused an injury to either you or one of your loved ones, give us a call. Our phone number is on our page, our website is on our page, and our email addresses are on our page. Please give us a call for a free consultation. We'd love to help you. Let Zach and I protect your rights.
Let's see if anybody in the chat knows it. Yeah, maybe this was easier than I thought. I guess a lot of people remember that Alex Gonzalez did play for the Brewers after many years with the Marlins in the World Series title. And I think still now he is the leader in games played at shortstop by Marlins. Like him and Mickey Rowe are kind of neck and neck in that category. But Egon had some very good years defensively. He doesn't actually grade out all that great in hindsight. But at the time,
79 OPS plus, baby.
Yeah, at the time, very greatly appreciated, an important glue guy for late 90s, early 2000s Marlins. As we do have another breaking trade, not involving the Marlins, but Ryan Stanek going from old friend Ryan Stanek going from the Marlins, the Mariners to the Mets. So that's going to be an interesting flip fish guy in the future. We use a lot of different teams for Ryan Stanek all of a sudden. He was with
the Mets Flyers
the previous 2 years, and now with the Mariners for the first part of this year, and now the Mets. So he's not included in this overall summary. Hold on, let me just get caught up on the trade deadline. This is technically the 7th significant trade. There's also Cole Sulser, another old friend. He was with the Mets. And
a couple old friends got traded already,
Yeah, but that one is, I don't even want to include that because Cole Sulser's not.
I mean, they DFA'd 2 pitchers, so.
Yeah.
Does that mean that the Mariners are selling? No, right?
It means they are rearranging their bullpen. This is why I really felt good about my proposal about sending Jazz and Pucks together to the Mariners, because they had a lot of relievers, but they really don't have anybody that they trust unconditionally except for their closer in Andres Munoz. They needed a real setup guy. And I imagine they just got one in Yimi. Yimi is their Ryan Stanek upgrade.
Right.
No, I'm not paying close attention. Yimi's been really good this season, and I think that is an upgrade for them.
Right. I forgot about that. So who do you think goes to Seattle? A big league bullpen? Is it Adam Ottavino?
Probably like a prospect or something.
I think it's still possible that we see some sort of Jazz, and I don't know. We should probably get into that. Where we are with Jazz right here.
Let's talk about this about Jazz. You know, the Mariners making a trading for Randy Arozarena, and for Aiden Smith, Brady Hopkins is a player to be named later. Let me talk to you through whoever wants to go in first. Does this take out the Mariners as a potential suitor for Jazz?
Originally, I thought it did. Then I realized how bad their production at second base has been. So, no, I don't think it does. I think, honestly, thank God that Randy didn't get traded for the big time prospects like that. That saves some room for the Mariners to make a couple more moves, and those being potentially getting Jazz. I wouldn't even rule out. I mean, if they're going to reshuffle his bullpen, go after like a Tanner Scott too, try to get him on the deal with Jazz. I think that would make a lot of sense. Seems like they're still looking to get some relievers out there, along with Yimi. So you could get some of those top prospects potentially for Jazz and Tanner. You would get some pretty good value back there. And Jazz plays second base. Randy, I believe it'll be center field for Randy, now Julio's out, so who knows how that'll work. So yeah,
I think the corner outfield spots for Randy. He's not a center fielder.
I think it makes it a little bit less likely that Jazz goes there. But if you package Tanner, that's exactly what Seattle needs in both senses. Holy cow, you get a really nice second baseman with 30-30 potential, and you get the best reliever in all of Major League Baseball. And yes, Devin, absolutely. That's why do you think he's playing DH today? I'd be shocked if they put it back in center for the rest of the first half before the deadline. Right? There's no way.
We may play the rest of these games at second, honestly.
Yeah, I would not risk it. I don't care if it's a 1-run lead. Don't pitch Tanner. It's just not, the juice is not worth the squeeze. If you guys want another Samson line, it's really not.
Yeah. So I want to touch on this from Sean Millerick, that Seattle has a lot of ammunition they can use in trades. Like, they have one of the better farm systems in baseball, and I don't think they're depleting much from their system, and even the trades they've made so far, maybe they'll get something back even in exchange for Stanek that helps in that regard. They still have not touched any of their top 7 or 8 prospects in the organization. And I think the Marlins could be able to nab one of those if Jazz is involved in a deal, but not really the case if it's only a reliever going over there. So I agree.
Sorry to cut you off. What about the Orioles? Orioles making 2 moves, trading for Zach Eflin, trading away Austin Hayes for Sir Anthony Dominguez, and Marlins killer Christian Pache. Are the Orioles? Do you guys believe the Orioles could be some fit for the Marlins, or do you think they're already set in terms of what trades they want to do for the deadline?
For Tanner,
they're going to go out. Yeah, Tanner. Yeah.
For Tanner, any contender at all would love to add Tanner. For Jazz, I think it's a little bit of a sticky fit. They have Cedric, who's literally only playing because of his defense, and I don't think they need any more infielders. I don't see that as a fit. But for Tanner, I think the Marlins and Orioles match up really well for not only Tanner, but for all the relievers in Cronin, Fauché, Nardi. I think they match up really well because any team can use bullpen help.
Yeah. And I wanted, in case Nate isn't able to join us, Nate Carsmer, he put together a Pirates proposal with Jazz. I helped him a little bit with this. We went with a quantity over quality deal. Just because the quality at the top end of the Pirate system, it doesn't match up great unless you think they can pull a Tamar Johnson, and Craig Mish kind of went out of his way to say that's not going to happen. So you got to go down to Thomas Harrington. You can argue is the 3rd best pitching prospect that the Pirates have. He's performing really well at AA, but more of a back-end starter profile than a difference maker so far. Really good control that he has in a nasty changeup. And we went with these 3 other various lottery tickets, toolsy position players, a couple of them playing in rookie ball. Lonnie White Jr. is up to high A. He's a former early round draft pick, but he's not really performing to this point. I think he's hitting under 200. He just is contact hitting issues, even though the tools are pretty loud right there. And I think this measured out pretty fairly, all things considered. But it is, even though it's a deal that the Pirates, they have that obvious need in center field where they're just getting terrible offensive production from center. I actually pulled up the stat about Michael A. Taylor that he's aside from being a terrible overall hitter, he doesn't have a single extra base hit with runners in scoring position the entire year. Like, he just is awful at the most important times offensively, where they've just been absolutely killed by lack of hitting in center field so far. And in general, their offense is well below average. So Jazz would fit in really well. He'd be really cheap for them even beyond this year. And the Pirates are just as low payroll as the Marlins are. So that is an important factor to get somebody with his upside that's also going to be very affordable salary-wise for the near future in that regard. So it's a good fit from the Pirates' perspective. I just don't know if the pieces fit on the other end really. So I've been saying it for a couple of weeks now that the Mariners make so much sense. And I think they still do, even with the Randy acquisition, because second base has been such a total, actual abyss of production that they've had so far. So he'd be a pretty big upgrade in that regard and help out a team that has a lot at stake this season. They've blown a big lead in the AL West in record time. And Jazz is among all the realistically available hitters on the market right now. He might be the best finishing piece that they could possibly get.
I guess that Orioles series really brought up his value, because I think if you did this 2 weeks ago, you're not getting all these four top 30 guys. I think that was pretty optimistic if you're a Marlins executive. That's a lot of talent there.
I mean, aside from Harrington, there's a big drop off between Harrington and the rest of those guys.
But still, it's three other probably top 25 guys, maybe. Not that it's a great system, but.
Do you guys like the quantity over quality? Would you rather have 4 guys or maybe 2 guys in the top 10 rather than maybe 4 guys in the top 30?
It depends. So? It depends who the quality is and who the quantity is. If it's 1-for-1 Termar or 1-for-4, these guys probably choose 1-for-4 because you don't know if Termar works. It's tough. It all depends on who they are. It's not an easy business.
Yeah, and we're mentioning all these teams. It seems like we're mentioning the same 3 teams for Jazz. Do you guys think there's any surprise team that could come up there for Jazz? Maybe you guys believe that they could come in and maybe give the best offer for Jazz. We mentioned the Pirates, the Mariners, the Orioles, the Yankees have been in talks. That could be a team. And do you guys think there's another surprise team that could maybe sneak in towards the back door, or do you guys are set in stone that it will be one of the 4 teams that we've been really talking about for the past couple weeks?
I don't know if this is a crazy thing. I don't know if you guys discussed it already, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say the Kansas City Royals are going to.
Oh, you got my team. Yeah.
They're going to acquire Jazz Jr. I'm not in love with the Royals farm system, and especially how they match up with Miami. But they've got some catching prospects that I'd be interested in. I don't know which ones you're going to get. They've got some pitching, and I think the Royals have an outside chance to acquire this player, and it's the first time they're good in a long time. I think Jazz Chisholm Jr. goes to the Royals. Heard it here.
That's probably the team I would look at too, and they need bullpen help as well. And they're not very high up there in Major League Baseball when it comes to, I believe, F1 bullpen. They're towards the bottom actually, so it makes a lot of sense. With you could probably throw in Tanner Scott or even another one of these relievers to add them some value. So yeah, Royals definitely the team to look at. It really. Right now, I really can't think of another one. It doesn't look like Texas is going to buy by any means, although they could really use some offense. That's really the only thing. Maybe the Yankees. I know that's been mentioned a couple times, but yeah, really.
You don't think any in-division teams? Maybe anything in the division that could potentially. It doesn't have to be just for Jazz, but in terms of maybe any other players that you'll see in-division trades this deadline for the Fish.
I know some folks want to see Atlanta, but I really doubt it. Maybe a reliever to one of these teams. Mets kind of looking like they're going all in with some relievers, so we'll see. I mean, it's tough to say.
Well, to this point, the Phillies, with the trade that they made, the Hayes for Dominguez swap, they're pretty clearly looking for another impact reliever. Like I think that at this point might be the most obvious fit for Tanner Scott. I mean, there's so many options out there that you really can't narrow it down that much, but that's really all the Phillies need at this point. They are such a complete team, with the exception of some of the shakiness in the back end of their bullpen. They have faced Tanner Scott a lot head-to-head, so they know exactly what he has to offer. They have that familiarity. They're run by Dave Dombrowski, who is no stranger to doing these all-in type of moves. He's fearless when it comes to going after rentals, even if he's not going to re-sign them. Who knows if they're able to, but they have the financial means to potentially bring back Tanner Scott long-term, because the Phillies at this point, they're one of the more higher spending teams in all of baseball. So that's another factor going into there. So in terms of in-division trades, that's the one that I think is the best chance is Tanner to the Phillies. And they still have basically any farm system can have somebody of fair value to send back in exchange for Tanner. Like I've been pretty adamant about this, that I just think he's been everything you could possibly want from a reliever lately, but just doesn't change the fact that he is a rental reliever. And there's a ceiling on what you could get back in return for those guys and what teams have to offer to get them. But I think the Phillies would be as motivated as anybody to try to bring him over there for the rest of the season so that they can get over the hump after being close, but not quite winning a title the last couple of years.
Yeah. So with this deadline, we're mentioning Jazz, we're mentioning Tanner. What do you guys believe maybe the odds are in another player maybe in the bullpen getting traded? Or I know Morosi put it out there, Trevor Rogers, but again, the starting pitching market is very thin. So would you guys say maybe the odds are high that we will see multiple guys not named Jazz and Tanner Scott be traded this deadline, or maybe it's set in stone that it would just be Jazz and Tanner?
No, I would say never. I mean, I think Trevor Rogers is a very intriguing name. You kind of noted it just now. The starting pitching market is as thin as it gets. When you're seeing James Paxton, who was DFA not too long ago, go get traded, I mean, that's how desperate teams are. And you also have Zach Eflin, who was on the move for 3 prospects. I think 2 that have already been known, or 3 are known for that in that case. I would if I'm the Marlins, I'm calling teams asking what they would trade for Trevor Rogers. Honestly, he's looked really good. Not too, these past couple of weeks. I don't know what the value would look like exactly, but that's definitely a name I'm trying to see if teams would be interested in some sort of trade there, where even in the playoffs he could give you a couple innings and could be a pretty good player. Maybe some teams could make him look like what he used to look like originally. Maybe change of scenery would help Rogers. Not obviously, you have to talk about, Cronin, Fauché. I think every reliever, you honestly have to kind of mention Rosenthal's been pretty clear about it, that every single reliever has a good shot, has a chance of getting traded. I mean, that bullpen has no odd man out right now, unless, well, never mind. I have Austin Kitchens and Manuel Ramirez, but before that, there was no odd man out. So, yeah, I think outside of Jazz and Tanner, those are not going to be the only 2 players moved. I mean, the Marlins have a lot of leverage in this case with how much of a seller's market this is and how desperate teams could get, especially for someone like a Tanner Scott. I mean, Miami has a really good chance to really hit it with this trade deadline.
Yeah, I do think we see, aside from Tanner, one other of these relievers moved because of just how well they've performed and the kind of stuff that they have. On our previous stream with Connor Newcomb, he went into the details on Calvin Fauché that probably some people overlooked, like just how special his stuff is, in particular his cutter, like one of the nastiest in baseball, just going by stuff plus. That's something that's really hard to teach, and he's been performing. All these guys are like peaking at the right time in terms of their performance to look like guys that could slide into a competitive team's bullpen right now. The extra years of club control will help with the return at this point. And if you're the Marlins, there's just no reason to chance things, because you got to give credit to Bendix. Fauché was an afterthought when they acquired him. Cronin was an afterthought when they acquired him. And if he's able to do it in those couple cases, you shouldn't be afraid to deal them, because you should have the confidence that whatever process led you to those 2 guys could lead you to other surprising finds in the future, where you might be able to fill these voids without giving up much of anything in future deals, because the process that they went to acquire these guys in the first place seems to have been really sound, and they found ways to get the best out of them, performing in ways they hadn't before. I was just saying on Trevor, as he has been really solid for an extended period of time, I just don't think he's going to change anybody's perception about him in terms of where he stands on a rotation depth chart. He's not going to be starting playoff games for a team. He can help you get to the playoffs with being solid, with giving you 5 innings, 2 runs allowed, 5 innings, 2 runs allowed, 6 innings, 2 runs allowed, 6 innings, 3 runs allowed, where it's going to be fine. It's never going to be dominant. He just has not missed bats at all in the way that he did prior to everything unfolding. Went back to his rookie year. He hasn't gotten back to being that player. And I don't think it's realistic to think he is suddenly going to flip a switch down the stretch. So he has value, but I think he has more value to a team over the course of a full season. I think he's an interesting trade candidate this offseason, but he still will have 2 more years of club control remaining. But I think most likely it's with the relievers. And maybe you do see one of these surprising hitters that still have club control go. Like I wouldn't put that past this front office with one, even though, yeah, we'll see. I don't have a specific one in mind, but on a reliever, which one do I think has the best chance aside from Scott? I will say Fauché. I think Fauché does get traded.
I think Bender also has a good shot too. I mean, less control, I think, kind of like Puck. I mean, not obviously not going to garner you what Puck got, but it's a reliever that maybe teams would like to have. I don't know. I think everyone's on the board at this point, kind of like what Peter said on the thing. And at this point, whoever goes, and they have a lot of ammunition in AAA that will come up and kind of make up for the loss that they already have. Arias, Elvis Alvarado, those guys definitely will make up. Not Austin Kitchen, no offense, but I don't know how he's been doing since joining the org.
Yeah. Let's talk about this series now. We have around maybe 8 minutes to talk about this series coming up. It just seems like, going to trade deadline season, these series maybe become, I don't want to say an afterthought, but maybe seem second in terms of what we really want to discuss about. But let's discuss about this series, final series before or I should say one of the final series before the trade deadline. Then they go play the Rays, Tampa. Eli, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the Brewers. Christian Yelich, former Marlin, former MVP, out for the remainder of the season. I believe it's hip, correct, or his back?
He's not out for the remainder of the season, but yeah, it's a back injury.
He'll most likely will be out in terms of make the playoffs, everything.
And most likely,
yeah. It's a big injury for the Brewers to see how they come back from that. Again, very young team. With Trey, Joey Ortiz, Sal Frelick, Eli. With the loss of Christian Yelich, does that affect them drastically, or is it just they're able to recoup the loss of Christian Yelich?
It puts a lot of pressure on Jackson Churio, who got off to a slow start. He signed one of these pre-debut extensions, got $80 million before he played a game, and he got off to a slow start the first 2.5 months. He was a mediocre all-around player, but quietly over the last month and a half or so, he's been awesome. And he's hitting leadoff now, and he's probably going to hit at the top of their lineup for the foreseeable future, maybe even when Yelich comes back. He is showing why he was one of the very best prospects in all of baseball at the time when he broke through. So there's a lot of pressure on him to kind of be the leader of their offense. William Contreras is really solid in the middle there. He got off to a crazy hot start, Contreras, but he has since settled down where, he's one of the better catchers in baseball, but he's not an MVP candidate the way that Yelich has been in the past when he is at the top of his game. It's a deep lineup. They've done a good job with player development. I guess we could mention Joey Ortiz just because that was a name the Marlins were reportedly interested in last offseason as well when the Orioles were trading him, and he has played extremely well, being close to an everyday player for the Brewers at this point. But without Yelich, feels like the ceiling of their team is a little bit lower right now. So they're a little inconsistent offensively. They have also used more starting pitchers than any other team in baseball, even more than the Marlins have, believe it or not. It's extraordinary that they've been able to patch things together at the same time. But really weird team that has overachieved for sure, considering what the talk was entering the year, where it seemed like they might be sliding into a rebuild. And there's still questions long-term about how they're going to fill out their rotation. But otherwise, it's a super deep bullpen. And even if none of these guys, aside from Yelich, has truly popped as a dominant offensive player, there aren't a lot of easy outs in here either.
Yeah, maybe some people of note. You have Bryce Terang, who has been one of the best defensive players also in baseball. I believe he has close to a 4 WAR as of right now. Very underrated in terms of how he's doing it. And, also look at the Brewers playing 2 catchers. I know William Contreras catching, and then you have Gary Sanchez DHing. Just maybe the turnaround from him, being DFA from the Mets and then getting picked up from the Padres, now back to the Brewers. Rhys Hoskins, who's not had the season maybe he has quite hoped to have since coming back from his injury. Kevin, when you look at this Brewers lineup, what do you see? What do you like before we head on over to the Marlins?
William Contreras has been a stud. There's another way to put it. He's been really good. I believe he was the All-Star. He was an All-Star this season. Joey Ortiz, I think the Marlins kind of wish Luzardo was kind of on the Orioles right now, and Joey Ortiz was a Marlin. He would be right now the shortstop of the future. He's been really good for the Brewers. Aside from that, it's an overall good lineup. It always feels like with the Brewers, you kind of tell yourself, that's it. It's over. Championship contention, not really looking good, but they always find themselves at the top of the NL Central for some reason. Willie Thomas is a stud. He's been really good for the Brewers. He's going to get himself a nice deal in free agency. Starting pitching, always good for the most part. They made a couple moves here and there. We'll see if they make some more additions. They need some offense in there as well. Jazz, another good fit for the Brewers, honestly. But yeah, I mean, it's a good lineup. They're always a solid team. For some reason, I believe Miami actually always plays pretty well in Milwaukee for some reason. I think they've taken the last couple series over there, so we'll see. But it should be a fun 3-game set, maybe a couple hug watch moments from both teams as the Brewers look to contend and the Marlins look to trade away some pieces.
Yeah, now let's look at this Marlins lineup to see what they're going to be trotting out there against the Brewers. Jazz DHing, Xavier Edwards, shortstop. I don't know if you say his name. Oh my God! Of course, you mentioned Xavier Edwards. Who else?
Magic.
But Nate to show up. Nate, talk to us. Talk to us about X. Get hitting second in the lineup. What you prayed and hoped for is now happening. And then what else you see, and just overall from these two lineups and this Brewers matchup.
Yeah, you guys threw up the bat signal pretty much. So now I'm here to talk about the man himself, Xavier Edwards. I mean, I requested it last series, and now here he is hitting second. He had a 3-hit game in game 2 of the series, and he's been hitting, obviously since he's been called back up. But even he's been drawing walks. He's been getting on base any way he can. And obviously he stole a couple bases too this series. So he's just showing how valuable he can be to this Marlins team. And also defensively, Skip touched on that. We're not talking about Edwards defensively, and that says that, he's obviously improving at shortstop. He's looking a lot better there, I'd say. So I love him hitting second. I think he's going to continue to kill it. Josh Bell, back in the cleanup spot, he's hitting very well as of late recently. So another guy that's heating up for the Marlins, and same with Jake Berger a little bit, getting a little on a hot streak, and obviously Jazz leading off still. And we did mention Otto Lopez struggling a little bit. I think he's still trying to figure it back out. It's hard to maintain that super hot stretch, especially as a guy, that came up from AAA and off, a waiver claim to stay that hot throughout, the dog days of summer. So I like this lineup a lot, to be honest.
Josh Bell's been killing it too. So shout out to him. I think he's on a 5-game hit streak. I think in those 5 games, 3 home runs. So maybe he keeps it going enough just to slip in a quick trade for Bell, get a couple more prospects out there. I think Nick Gordon's playing his third game this season in center field. It's a nice lineup. Nick Forte's back out there. I don't know if he played in that last game in the Orioles series. I've been kind of checked out for a couple of days, but yeah, I like the lineup. Nate has a good point. Yeah, really good, nice lineup, and probably not going to be the one we see after July 30th, but yeah.
I just need to touch on briefly about Otto Lopez. I put this up on Twitter. He's quietly been awful for an extended period offensively. He's been such a pleasant surprise defensively at second base. He has 1 RBI in the last month and a half. Think about that. That's like a quarter of the season. Otto Lopez, he's not producing runs whatsoever. There was a little bit of slugging early on that made him intriguing, and that has totally gone away, coincidentally or not, since he came back from the paternity list as a first-time dad in the second week of June. He's been the worst hitter on the team during that stretch. It's a WRC plus of 29% of the league average. So that has to change because he's been getting opportunities. He's been playing pretty consistently, even with Jazz experimenting and dabbling at second base. The window is not going to stay open all year long if he continues being in this slump. That's kind of what I want to reiterate with Otto. Even though he's been a nice story early on, you need to actually adjust to what he's been doing recently and be realistic that you can't just default all this playing time at this position just because there are other alternatives at second base in this organization coming up, whether it's Javier Sanoa knocking on the door at AAA, whether it's being realistic with Edwards that he may be sliding over there someday and just search for a shortstop. There's ways to find other second basemen. He needs to hit a little bit. For the season overall, it looks okay relative to expectations, but he is just trending in such a bad direction. So hoping for his sake that turns around really soon.
Yeah. Sorry, LMF. I don't think we have a little time for four wall and talk there, but let's go ahead and talk a little bit about some of these pitching matchups very quickly before we head into prediction time. We just touched on Max Meyer, him coming back from AAA, his extended stint in the minors. But for today's, I believe, let me get this real quick. Rogers against Freddie Bravo.
Yeah.
The matchup for today, Tobias Myers coming out the next couple days for the Brewers, and newly acquired Aaron Savali also for them. So very interesting rotation that the Brewers are going to be bringing out there. No lefties, so maybe that can be pretty good there for the Marlins. Eli, talk to me. Trevor Rogers, Max Meyer, and maybe that last TBA who trying to figure out still who could be.
Yeah, they still have even when Max comes back, it's a 4-man rotation that they have at the moment after sending down Munoz. So they either call up a fresh arm or they patch it together with a million guys in their bullpen one way or another, it's not going to be a great opportunity to win that one. This series is all about Max and seeing exactly how he performs in this situation. It's only his 6th career start in the big leagues. It's still such a small sample with him. He was so successful early on this season, and I'm just excited to see him back in this situation going against a pretty good team without any easy outs in that lineup. So all eyes on Max for me on the pitching side.
Yeah, Nate, since you just got in, I'll hear from you in terms of the pitching that you see here for the Marlins, or maybe even with them offensively, what they could do against all righties.
Yeah, I believe Peralta got the start. Wasn't he opposing Luzardo when Luzardo threw the best start of the season? Yeah, so Peralta's already shut down the Marlins once this year, so it is an encouraging, against going against all righties for the Marlins. They have a better chance of, with obviously Jazz and Xavier and Bell at the top to, potentially set the table for the guys lower in the order. But, they hit well against Orioles pitching. We weren't really expecting them to, but they still did. So, if they can continue staying hot throughout the lineup, I want to also mention last series, they got a lot of length throughout the bottom of their order, a lot of clutch hitting. Brujan in that second game, obviously when Edwards was hitting 7th, he also came through a couple times. And Ollie Sanchez, I want to mention, he had a very clutch sack bunt to get guys over for Jazz, which, he brought in the 2 guys with his RBI double in game 2. So if the Marlins can just keep running out the back of the order with, quality at bats and moving guys over and dragging out line at bats against these Brewers starters, I think the Marlins can get something going. And I didn't get the chance to talk about Max Meyer. Very excited to see what he brings. He struggled in AAA when he first got sent down. Skip touched on that. Could really been pissed off about the decision, to be honest. So he settled in after being down in Jacksonville for a little bit, and was very impressed with how he took the situation in stride. And I'm expecting big things. Like Eli mentioned, this is really all about Max. So I'm very excited to see what he does tomorrow.
Yeah, very interesting to see what happens there. Eli, let's get that music going. Well over an hour. We can keep talking more about this, the Marlins in terms of maybe what they're doing great. Let's go with this prediction time.
This is prediction time.
I don't want to toot my own horn here, but I'm really good at this.
All right. So as we're looking at the leaderboard, of course, number one myself, but for prediction time for everyone, again, always asking you who will win the series, who will get MVP, and then we're going to add one more extra prediction. And for that prediction, it will be how many trades the Marlins will do from now until the trade deadline, not counting AJ Puck. So if you think they have 1 trade, 2, 3, 4, maybe they have 15 trades.
I think just to make it easier, let's include the Puck trade and just say the total deadline week trades for the Marlins, just so people aren't confused by that. So we'll include the Puck one as one.
Total trades including Puck.
Yeah.
So they already have one. They already have one.
Right.
So looking here with 37, they have Gabriel Baby Seal right up my tail. On this 30.
Let's do it.
Of course, leading us off, Mr. Kevin.
Feeling pretty good. Marlins will stick 2 out of 3 against the Orioles. Marlins will take 2 out of 3 against the Brewers. And my series MVP is going to be Josh Bell. Including the Puck trade, the Marlins are going to make 4 trades this deadline. That already includes Puck, so they'll make 3 more.
Ooh. All right, I'll go with myself here. I'm going to go the opposite of what Kevin just said. I'm going to go the Brewers take 2 out of 3. Marlins win that middle game with Max Meyer on bump. And my MVP, let's go with Bryce Turang. Wizard defensively, let's see him pick it up a bit offensively. And how many trades? I'm going to go with 3. I think they make 2 more trades. It's going to be a deal package, Tanner and Jazz, and then another reliever gets traded. Nate.
I'm going to roll with Kevin. I think the Marlins will take 2 out of 3 this series. Brewers have been playing good baseball, but so have the Marlins. They just did 2 out of 3 against Baltimore. And the Marlins already took 2 out of 3 from Milwaukee back in Miami, I believe, in May. Series MVP has to be Xavier Edwards. I think he's going to stay hot, drive some more guys in, keep getting on base for the Marlins. And I believe the Marlins will make 3 trades, including the Puck trade. I think they're going to package Shaz in the reliever, and then obviously the big Tanner Scott deal. So I got 3 trades.
Mr. Eli.
Brewers win the series 2 out of 3 in Milwaukee. Jackson Chourio series MVP honors as he continues to really establish himself as a great player, the way he was prophesized to be. I have it as 4 deadline week trades for the Marlins. Aside from Puck going, Scott going, Josh Bell is going to find a new home. Jazz and Fauché. I think there's going to be a bundle somewhere in there where it's going to be 5 total players going out in 4 separate deals. Peter Bendix continuing to cook, putting his mark on this Marlins franchise in his first year in charge.
All right. That's perfect. So out there, Marlins look to make see how many trades they do make now going up against the Brewers. It'll be an interesting time from now up until the trade deadline. And also at the trade deadline, we'll have someone in coverage in Tampa with Alex Krutchik. He will be there. Maybe have the Rays are also sellers as well. They've made plenty of trades. Maybe they make a couple more. Maybe Yandy Diaz makes that walk across the clubhouse to head over into the Marlins. But that's going to do it for us here at FOF Live. For myself, Daniel, for Eli, for Kevin, for Nate, for Isaac, who joined us earlier. This is FOF Live presented by Berger and Hicks. And as a farewell to AJ Puck, in his words, let's get louder.